Hi everybody. Hi everybody. I hope y'all are doing very well, especially during this difficult time, and I just hope everything looks better for you. So today, the topic of today for this video, I want to talk about Addie Walker, the titular character of her series in the American Girl collection, the historical collection. Now I decided at the ripe old age of 28 years old to take upon myself and read the whole series. At the time, I think I was around 10. No, I had to be 9 years old when I started reading. I read just about everyone else's. The lineup at the time was Felicity, Kirsten, Josefina, Samantha, Addie, of course, Molly, and Kit. Kit was one of the newest ones that I read. Um, and then by the end, they had Kaya, but I never got around to reading her. I never did read Addie's series when I was younger, and when I thought about it up to that point, I thought to myself, I really am not in the mood to read about slavery all the time. I know it's important for us to read, to be educated about, American slavery, the transatlantic slavery, um, because it's part of our history. It is essential. It is basically part of what made this country what it is. But in terms of entertainment, it can get bothering, and knowing sometimes as African American, usually seeing images of slavery, a part of it, part of the problem with Black American representation tends to be what type of representation, in particular slavery. Um, like many, I do get riled up or I do get emotional sometimes seeing those compromised positions. So we're gonna take a little trip behind Meet Addie, the series of American Girl. Meet Addie series are part of the American Girl historical collection. The series are built around the character featured in the American Girls doll series. This series was written by Connie Porter, an African American writer whose specialty is young adult genre. Until 2011, Addie was the only black character in the series. So when we meet Addie, we see that she's a 10-year-old girl residing on the Griffin plantation under the charge of Master Stevens. And I don't know why in the world they have this man under the friends section. I don't know why they put Master Stevens as a friend. Master Stevens is not a friend. He is an oppressor and a POS. Thank you. But we'll get more into Master Stevens. So, the first part of the book obviously would deal with the realities of slavery because Sam and Papa are sold off to another plantation. And obviously Addie is distraught, but her mother tells her that she can't really show affection. I guess that must be one of the effects today in the black community is that we can't really show our emotions, or else there seems to be some consequences when you look back in history. If you try to stand up for yourself, you are met with some form of reaction which could cost your life, pretty much. Not only that happens, but the overseer, as a punishment for not deworming the Tabasco leaves, puts worms in Addie's mouth. Discuss harsh realities in this book. So because of this, she and her mom decided to run off and make it to freedom in Philadelphia. They had to leave Esther behind because she was going to make noise. So they go through this trek. They finally make it to one of the houses that offer aid to runaway slaves. So they finally make it to Philadelphia, where they meet Sarah. Sarah will be a friend of Addie's, and the Moores, which is Sarah's parents, and also Reverend Drake. They help them, integrate into the society in Philadelphia, try to find jobs. One of which Addie's mom finds a job as a seamstress, excuse me. So, Addie is enrolled in school and Miss Dunn is her teacher, and she also comes across Harriet, who does come off as pretentious Her family has been freed people, and leads her to have like this better than another person attitude. Just stuck up 9-year old, and we'll get to that in the lessons. Papa is reunited with Mama and Addie um in Philadelphia. Addie's birthday come around, but in slavery they didn't really have birthdays, or obviously they couldn't read, so how would they know their birthdays and whatnot? So Addie goes along and picks a special day for her, while at the same time dealing with some of the realities of living up north as a freed slave. Addie, Sarah, and Harriet, they all put their differences aside when Harriet finds out that her uncle, who was in the army in the Civil War, had passed away. Also, another surprise is that Sam is reunited with the family, but a big reality for Sam is that he loses his arm as a result of, fighting for his freedom in the war, participating in the Union Army. In the last book, which concludes the series, it's wintertime, and, obviously for the title, there are a lot of changes for Addie. One of which is that Auntie Lula and Esther make it to Philadelphia. Everyone is pretty much reunited except for Uncle Solomon, sadly, because he passed away on the way there, but yet he died a free man. And the biggest lesson from this book, from Auntie Lula, is that not everybody is going to make it with you, and that's a part of life. Not everybody is going to be on the journey with you every way. And that's when Auntie Lula passes away 2 days before Christmas. So let's get to the biggest lessons in this series. The biggest lesson, obviously, is that freedom ain't free. Reverend Drake said it best, and I'm going to say it again. Freedom ain't free. In a skewed way, when they were on the Gifford plantation, Addie and her family, they could have went from cradle to the grave with no fortune, provided that they hadn't went and escaped and fought for their freedom. But that was the reality leading up to 1865, was that from dusk till dawn, generation after generation did not have wealth, and we obviously see this in the black community where there's a wealth gap. Despite the fact, yes, we have our own people making it and creating their wealth and creating their streams of income, there still is a gap. I do not have to make this up. So when they get to freedom, they arrive to Philadelphia, they find that everything their wants and needs, will have to come out of pocket and hard work. Freedom definitely isn't free when it comes to Sam, and that symbolism comes in the price of his arm. That is what he had to pay for in his freedom. His freedom isn't free because somebody has to pay. Freedom definitely isn't free for Esther, because their family has missed out on her early milestones from her first to second year. But thankfully for Esther, maybe pretty much all the kids, they don't have to spend the rest of their life in slavery. They can work on building their own wealth. Esther, for the rest of her life, pretty much, she doesn't have to soil and toil for nothing. She can make herself. She can be self-made, make her own money, not be chained to anyone. So that's some positivity in this series. So a second lesson in this series is that the North is not necessarily different from the South. We see, especially in Happy Birthday Addie, that yes, while the dad is transferring ice to the ice cream parlor, he can't take him and Addie to get an ice cream cone in said parlor. And when he tries to get a job as a carpenter, the white carpenters, they're afraid that the freed slaves, in anticipation for a job, are going to take the slots. And also, I always go back to Malcolm X when he talks about the troubles in his childhood, when his father passed away by the hands of the KKK, the Ku Klux Klan, because there he spoke unapologetically about his blackness and standing up. And because of his father's death, and because the people from the state harping on his mother, driving her into madness, that leading her to institution, and then the children breaking up, and his rough life until he had a second chance in Allah. I know some of y'all are fishy about that. His second chance being reborn into the person that we know today. All that happened in Nebraska, Michigan, Boston, New York, the northern part of the state. So that always let me know that obviously the North is not exactly the same as the South in terms of treatment, but it's apples and oranges. I'm very certain that it's better than completely enslaved. And so another example of some of the mistreatment for Black Americans in Happy Birthday Addie was when they get on the train. The colored people is part of my terminology, but the colored people had to stay in the back of the train. And in one scene in the book, it was so crowded for the passengers, colored passengers, that the conductor got agitated and tried to kick them off. And prior to that, there was a clerk who had got a nasty attitude with Sarah and Addie when trying to get medicine for Madeira. Um, so that lets you know that yeah, they moved away from slavery, but they still kind of dealing with some things living in Philadelphia. And another takeaway from this series, we may be black, sure, but yes, there are differences. There are differences because Harriet, with her pretentiousness, stuck up 9-year old, she feels that she is better than everybody else because she was not born a free slave and she is well off. And Miss Dunn tries to remind the students that we need to not have all these differences. They're all the same, but that's a problem. We do have differences, and it definitely shows in the black community, whether it's wealth, whether it's different backgrounds, or it could be based on religion, culture. There are some blacks, immigrant kids, African nationals or Caribbean, what have you, come over here and they feel, more out there from the blacks. But guess what? The mainstream is gonna let you know. There are myriads of differences between black people, so many divides, schisms. And we see through the book with Harriet, making fun of Addie's clothes. I'll give you an example. Harriet and her friends treating Addie as their flunky. At one time telling her, oh Addie, I can tell that you just got off the plantation. And that's the thing about some of these books. Some of these books kind of show you, no matter what period that you're in, some things are still going to, flow over to the next generation, transcend like differences, judging people based on what they wear. And that's still going on in the black community. Some kids will pick on other kids for wearing, not the cool shoes or not the right things and whatnot. It really don't make no damn sense to pick on other kids if y'all both go to the same school, in the same school zone, which obviously based on income. So you're telling on yourself. But yeah, stuff like that happens. You're gonna deal with cliques and people talk about the way you are and everything, and trying to fit in and realizing who your best friend is. So that's one of the big takeaways. Let's just talk about the pros and cons. I guess the pros of this series would be that it had to start in 1865. This was pretty much one of the only two POC characters written besides Josefina. But Josefina had a more, as far as I can remember, a more pleasant experience, more series run. But when you think about Cecile, I don't know. I'm grown. I graduated high school by the time Cecile graduated. I mean, by the time Cecile debuted, I graduated. So, and I guess, way before, antebellum period, there were free people, so you had to show that side. That was suck up until 2011 and 2016. You had up to 20 years of where the only representation of a black girl in this series started out as a slave. Doesn't ring well. It just leaves a bad odor, to the series. Yes, like I said before, it's important that we study. It's important that we study, our history, in particular slavery. But I'm very certain with everybody else when it comes to entertainment. When it comes to entertainment, we don't want to read about slavery all the time. Like, think about it. Isn't that fishy that the only black girl had to be, a just freely runaway slave? And I came across this TikTok because they added, subsequent characters since then, since I've stopped reading. And it had 1950s girl, no problems in the world, but they got a native Hawaiian character, Nanea. She had to use her strength after dealing with World War I. So I guess they must be doing another, no care in the world, no real problems for a white girl in the 1950s. They had to worry about communism and not getting pregnant. But with the POC characters, they kind of had to deal with some strife. When you think about it, Samantha, she never really had to deal with anything. She only dealt with, like, say, Nellie's her shortcomings and how their sisters, how Nellie's siblings had, food insecurity and whatnot, until pretty much Samantha, her uncle and aunts, they all became a blended family. When you think about it, not that much of the white counterparts made from Molly because her dad had to go off to war in the Great Depression. But not so much as akin to the black characters in these series. There could be other periods that they could do, like, I don't know, the Harlem Renaissance. There's so many other periods. They pretty much could try to do the 90s because black people, we pretty much ran the 90s. They could make a 90s doll from us and do a series. So that's all I just wanted to talk about, me finally reading the series. I kind of feel complete in my 10-year-old self, actually reading them all, save for Kaya. But thank you so much for checking out this video. If you enjoyed it, please give it a like, comment, and subscribe.